Evet, merhabalar herkese. Hepiniz IEFT Talks webinarlarına hoş geldiniz. Bugün İngiltere'de ilk 25'te, dünyada ise 176. sırada olan University of Liverpool'dan Ed ve Lisa bizlerle olacak. Yaz okulu programlarına dair her şeyi anlatacaklar. Lütfen sorularınızı soru cevap bölümünden yönlendiriniz. Yes, Ed, the stage is yours now.
Lovely. Okay. Thank you, Zeynep. Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who's chosen to attend this session. We're really pleased to see that there's a good number of you who have decided to give up some of your time to join us. So very quickly, I will introduce myself and our special guest today. I won't be talking too much, hopefully, because you're not here to listen to me, really. We've got a really interesting presentation. So my name is Ed Barley. I work at the University of Liverpool, and my specific area is looking at short courses and courses which take place outside of the normal sort of full undergraduate or full postgraduate course. So that could be a summer school in this case, or it could be a short research program, that kind of area. And today we're going to explore what Liverpool is doing in the area of summer programs with a special guest from the University of Liverpool Management School, Lisa Chamberlain.
Hiya, yes, thank you, Ed. Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you very much for having me. I am a PhD researcher at the Management School, and I'm really interested in good work and workplace cultures and how we get all different kinds of people working together as a team in a way that's healthy and happy for everybody. So this year at the International Summer School, I will be teaching a module on intercultural leadership and business, and I'm really excited about it. I think it'll be really fun. So, are we start then?
Yeah, we'll get the slides up, I think. So I'm going to give a very quick introduction to what the summer school is, because it's not necessarily something that everybody is familiar with, and then we'll move straight on to a really interesting session which takes in sort of everything from, well, you'll find out, but it's sort of touching on football, on intercultural communications. It's really good. So intercultural leadership and business taster. A taster of what? What are we tasting? So this is designed to be a very brief example of what the kind of thing you might find within the University of Liverpool's International Summer School. So the ISS, the International Summer School, basically this is the University of Liverpool's way of sharing what we do, the best of our teaching, the best of the campus experience, the best of the city, with students, undergraduate students from around the world who might not be able to or want to come to the UK for a longer period of time. But it's a credit-bearing course, so it's a course that can contribute to your home institution, to the study you're already doing. And it's an authentic experience because you are on campus, you're being taught by really inspiring teachers like Lisa, who you'll talk to in a minute. And you're experiencing the full sort of the full gamut of what Liverpool has to offer: the social life, the academic side of things, the facilities, the libraries, all of this. Next slide, please, Lisa. So this is a very quick summary of what the program is. If you choose to join the University of Liverpool International Summer School, you will be on campus. You'll have full access to the campus. You'll be studying modules by inspiring teachers we've talked about. And you'll be a full member of the University of Liverpool. And that means that when you graduate with your transcript, you're not just done with Liverpool, you are an alumni of Liverpool. And that means that if you decide to come back ever and maybe study for a postgraduate program, you will be a returning student, and there are tuition fees, tuition discounts associated with that. It's a short course, it's 3 or 6 weeks. You can choose to do 3 or the other 3 or the whole 6. And there's loads of different areas that you can choose to study. It could be business, could be management, like Lisa's going to talk about today. It could be Vikings, it could be psychology, it could be looking at issues of sustainability. It's a really diverse academic experience. And it's something that brings in people from all around the world. We call it international because it is. We have typically between 12 and 15 different nationalities on every year across the program, and that's growing year on year. So you will leave the program if you choose to study a short program at Liverpool. You'll leave with this really international cohort of friends and colleagues and classmates who, with any luck, you'll maintain contact with for the rest of your life. Now, we're going to talk about the academic side of it today. Lisa's going to give you some examples of the kind of areas we might explore. This is one module, but there's also a huge emphasis on sort of the social side of things, the fun side of things. So we also organize trips. You stay in accommodation on campus, and there's lots of kind of activities associated with that. We like to think that the International Summer School is a fairly sort of complete experience. You're only here for 3 weeks or maybe 6, but in that time, you're going to be studying, you're going to be making friends, you're going to be seeing the UK, you're going to be seeing and understanding the unique culture of Liverpool. And when you leave with your credits to take back, you will, with any luck, have a really, really strong identification with the city, with the university, and a much, much wider knowledge base of the subject that you've chosen to study. So you'll be pleased to hear that that's pretty much it for me. I will say, because Ayub has just messaged, we will take questions at the end. I promise there's going to be time for questions. I will sort of go through them and make notes as Lisa is talking, and I can answer what I can. And if it's a course specific program, Lisa should be able to look at it. If it's more about the sort of the shape of the ISS, then I will be able to look at it. And if it's in Turkish, we're going to ask for help. But we should be able to answer everything. So you'll see this is the last slide from me. This is just an example of our students, of them out and about on one of the trips. I think this is the Lake District, which is one of our trips that we go to. And you'll see on the left, there's a description or some words from the student. And what's really nice is that our students do leave with a really, really strong sense of, understanding Liverpool, of having met some really, really good friends who will, hopefully remain with them for the rest of their lives. Okay, I think that's me. I'll mute myself. Thank you, Lisa.
Perfect. Thank you, Ed. Thank you very much for that. And I myself am an international student. I'm American, so I can definitely say Liverpool is a great place to be an international student. Everybody is super, super friendly and welcoming. So happy to answer any questions about international life in Liverpool too at the end. But what we're really here for is a taster of the module that I'm teaching this year, which is, of course, intercultural leadership and business. So this is going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to be very kind of an overview of all the different types of things that we might talk about, but we're going to keep it around one single case study. So where's my clicky? There's my clicky. So we're just going to start off with just some key terms. So we need to know what culture is. We need to know what interculturalism is, and we need to know what leadership is, right? Those are kind of the 3 central parts of it. And then we'll apply that to a case study. So we'll look at a real organization and think about how do they do intercultural leadership and what kind of results do they get out of that. And at the very end, I'll give you just a quick overview of some of the kinds of questions that we'll be talking about in the module this summer. So when I think successful intercultural teams, I do think about Liverpool Football Club. It's true. And I wasn't a football fan before I moved to Liverpool, but they definitely get you. It gets in your skin. So how does this team of people from all over the world, lots of different cultural backgrounds, how do they come together to achieve success, right? So the question that we're asking today is, what can football teach us about intercultural leadership? But we have to start somewhere, right? So let's think about, what is culture? If you think about it for yourself, if you try to just come up with a definition right now about what is culture, it's kind of hard to do, right? Because it's all around us and it's everywhere. It's just like, well, it's culture. It's what we breathe and the water that we swim in. But to be a little bit more specific about it, culture is, we can say, it's a shared set of kind of our beliefs, our values, what we think is important in life, what kind of behaviors are acceptable or unacceptable, right? So for instance, do grandparents live in the family home, or do they live in a separate home just for old people, right? That's a cultural difference. And these kind of behavioral conventions. So these are kind of this shared set of orientations. And these influence how we think, how we act, and how we decide who is us and who is them. So you'll know that your Turkish culture is your Turkish culture because of these kind of shared assumptions. Now, that's not to say that everybody, obviously, in one culture thinks exactly the same. So really, this is a fuzzy set. It's most people, most of the time, think and believe and act in these ways. And that's how we kind of know the difference between American culture or British culture or Turkish culture, right? So then the next question is, what is interculturalism? Well, that is a little bit easier, frankly, to answer because it's kind of lots of different cultures working together is the short version. But the more in-depth academic version is that it's a way for us to think about how do we reconcile, how do we bring together the cultural diversity of a group and also create a unified thing, right? So how do you get footballers who are from Scotland, England, Denmark, Senegal, how do you respect the fact that they're from those places and that those places are important and their culture is important and still create a kind of cohesive whole without erasing any of that, kind of building it into something new? Interculturalism specifically, it's kind of a political approach, really. It's a way of thinking more than anything else. And it really emphasizes the importance of communication and dialogue, right? So this is something you'll do a lot at the summer school is talk to other people from all different cultures, not just British people, right? People from all over the world. And how do you really communicate together to build up the culture of, for instance, your classroom? And it also emphasizes, like we said, that there are sub-national cultures. So often it's really easy when we're speaking about multiculturalism or interculturalism to just kind of default to American, British, Turkish, right? But we know that there are subcultures within those and that those are also really important to people and those have a huge impact on the way they think and behave and what is important to them. And again, the real point of interculturalism is to try to find a way to have kind of community cohesion and create a shared identity, often a national identity, because this is often discussed in like political circles, but how do you bring all of that together? So that's kind of the thing that we talk about over the summer in a lot more depth. So the last one is another deceptively simple question. Right? So I'm going to give you about 5 seconds of silence to think about this. So I would like you, please, to picture when I say leadership, what is the image that comes to your mind? It can look like a lot of different things, right? I would be pretty confident in guessing that probably quite a lot of you pictured something sort of like the picture in the middle. So you have this older person who's at the end of the table who's discussing and kind of this looks very hierarchical, right? Like he is at the head of that meeting. And that is leadership. That is part of leadership. But leadership can also be people working together in a very hands-on way, right? Influencers, they're leaders, right? In a way, right? At their very core. So leadership doesn't have to just look like one thing, which is fantastic because that means that anybody can be a leader. We can all learn how to develop these leadership skills and help create the kind of world that's most beneficial to everybody. Or you can develop leadership skills to be an evil mastermind. That's up to you. But leadership is accessible to everybody. At its core, leadership is nothing more or less than just the process of understanding other people's motivations and putting it together to achieve a common goal. So in any kind of leadership scenario, there's going to be 3 different things, right? You'll have yourself and your beliefs, your history, your motivations. You'll have other people, the ones that you're trying to motivate or get to act in a particular way, and each of them have their own beliefs and goals and motivations. And you have the task, the thing that all of you need to come together to perform. Leadership happens right there, right in the middle of where those three things come together, right? Okay, so that's the end of the terms, right? So we know that culture is a shared set of beliefs that is mostly shared by groups of people, and it's how we differentiate between us and them. Interculturalism is the way that we work together to create a single whole without sacrificing what's unique about each of us. And leadership is the way that we get other people to work with us towards a shared goal. So, Liverpool, right? Let's look at the case study. Let's see how this kind of plays out in real life. So when you think about what different cultures are there at Liverpool Football Club, one of the first things you probably think, certainly one of the first things I would think of is, well, you've got international players, right? You've got players just on the first team from at least 15 different countries, if I counted correctly, right? And these countries are from different continents, very different. The coaching staff, the managers, the support staff, all of these people come from different places. So right off the bat, you have different national cultures. And because you have different national cultures, that means you have different languages, right? You have different expectations about what does a good day's work look like, what is hard work and what is break time, right? Lots of different, how do you speak to other people at work? Lots of different things coming in just from that. And you might say, well, yeah, that's true, but also they're all footballers, right? They all play football. So that is the thing, which is true, but different football leagues also have a shared kind of culture, right? So I'm not going to pretend that I know tons and tons about different football leagues, but some leagues, my impression is that like La Liga, it's like they maybe are more defensive and their culture is that you kind of sit back and you play these slower games, whereas maybe the Premier League is much more about attacking and fast, right? A more physical type of game. So you've got these different cultural expectations from people's work backgrounds, right? And then the club is also part of a broader sort of ecosystem, really, of cultures. So you've got, it's a business, right? So you have the corporate culture, you've got the owners, you've got the shareholders, you've got the brand deals, you've got the suppliers. There's a lot of businessy things happening in the background. The corporate culture is going to affect how the club functions. Also, kind of more on the outside, but still influential, is you've got, for instance, the media culture. How do people talk about football? What is the expectation of footballers and coaching staff and how they interact with the wider world? And Liverpool, of course, is a global team. So it's got fans everywhere. So it's not just media in the UK that maybe makes a difference, right? And the fan base is a third kind of culture that impacts the players, right? So you can hear this, and I'm sure it wasn't just Liverpool, right? This was across the world during the pandemic when fans weren't at the stadiums for the games. Players said they really felt the difference. They really noticed because that fan culture and the way people act at games makes a difference, right? And again, that varies from nation to nation. So when you think of, there's a lot going on. So how on earth do they come together to be a pretty successful football club, although this year isn't great, right? Well, it starts at the top. So we start with Jurgen Klopp, who is the manager. And one thing that's really important to do when you're on an intercultural team and you're the leader is to really help each member of that team work at their very best. So how does Klopp do that? It starts honestly before they even join the team. So apparently before Klopp signs a player, he asks them, do you like to train? And do you like to run? Because those two things are really, really important for his style of play, for the culture that he is creating on the team. And if they like those two things, it's going to be a good fit. So when you're thinking about people talking about fit and hiring fit and culture fit, that is about things like this. Like, we are a team that likes to run, right? So these little things, it's important to know your kind of internal culture so that when possible, you can select people who will be able to work well and be able to give their best, right? It's just better for everybody. Another thing Klopp does as a leader is he provides clarity. He is very clear with his players. So this is a quote from an interview that he gave, and he said there needs to be one voice and one plan and one belief. He doesn't want his players listening to their friends or to social media or to the people on the sports commentator channels, none of that. He needs everybody to come together around this one shared vision, right? So you remember that's self, others, and the goal. He wants them to stay right there in the middle. And he says that that's okay if they don't do it perfectly all the time because we're not perfect, but it is our way, right? That our way, that's how you know he's talking about culture. And the final thing he does is he builds enthusiasm, right? He says, I like these players. I'm really positive when I look at them. They've got the right attitude. They've got the skills. They've got the willingness to learn, right? So that you can see this already kind of starting to run through that we're not perfect, but we learn. And this is there are people who've done very in-depth studies about this and can tell you the rates and the stats but basically people, when they like their work and feel enthusiastic about it, work harder and try to do better, and then they do better. It's as simple as that, even though we academics like to complicate it. That is a really straightforward proposition. So because Liverpool players like playing for Liverpool, they get good results most of the time, right? But leadership doesn't just happen at this very top level, right? It goes across all levels. So we go down and we'll look at these two guys. So James Milner on the left is the vice captain, and Jordan Henderson on the right is the captain of Liverpool. And what they show us is how important it is for leaders in multicultural settings to develop cultural intelligence, right? You need to be able to understand other people and other cultures. How do they do that? Jordan Henderson is very active about this. So this is a quote from, I am not great on pronunciation, but this is a quote from Onuha, a player that Henderson played with years ago at a different team, right? So in 2020, when there were the Black Lives Matter movement was kicking off, there were obviously huge protests in the United States and elsewhere about race relations. Jordan Henderson reached out to this player that he had played with before, who's a Black man, and asked him, said, I don't get this. I don't know. Can you please tell me? Can you please help me about your experience? And you can see that the player said, I love him for that. He wanted to learn and he asked me to tell. So you can't be passive about developing cultural intelligence. You have to go out and seek that understanding. Be willing to not be perfect, right? Just like sometimes you're not perfect on the pitch. And Milner also is really good at this. So what he does, he shows us about how you build trust as an intercultural team. So in an interview, he says that, they're a really together team. They don't just play and then leave and go home. Like, they spend time together. They like each other. And because they're building these relationships in a less formal way, they're becoming more trusting, and their relationship on the pitch, their job performance is improved, right? Another thing that Milner did when he used to play for Manchester City, he got there and two of the senior players basically only spoke Spanish. And so he thought, well, I guess I need to learn Spanish then. And he did. And he's now fluent in Spanish and apparently only speaks to his children in Spanish. They're English children, but at home, he speaks Spanish to them because it's important to him that he understands how other people work and see, and that he is able to communicate. Now, I'm not saying that you need to learn the language of every person in your intercultural workplace, but the understanding that everybody needs to adjust and learn together really helps develop the cultural intelligence and helps people feel like they can perform at their best and that they are welcome members of the team. So how does that work down to the player level? Well, this is Darwin Nunez, who's a new player this year. He is from South America, and he speaks Spanish. Obviously, one of the immediate things that springs to mind when you think about difficulties with intercultural teams is just communicating across language barriers. So you already speak much better English than I speak any other language. Like, learning languages is really hard. And you'll know, as people who know second and third and fourth languages, that even when you understand the basics, all those little nuances and idioms, jokes, like those things can be really tricky, especially because that's such a big part of workplace culture. So how do you get around that? How do you work with that to create intercultural teams? Nunez has given a couple of interviews about this, and he said that one thing that's really important is team member support. By the way, these are both translated, I'm assuming, but he says, look, I don't really speak English, but we make it work because we use sign language because it's important to us to connect. So we make it work. And that, of course, the other South American players who also speak Spanish kind of help him and take him under their wing. But also Henderson goes out of his way to make sure that he's speaking to Nunez, that he's getting to know them, getting to know him, that Nunez gets a chance to practice his English, right? So this is active leadership. This is communicating actively across barriers. And that's Nunez trying too, right? That's not just, oh, isn't Henderson nice to come talk to him? Like, no, that's the whole team coming together to bring everybody into it. And Nunez says he also gets support from the manager, right? From Klopp. So he says, look, I don't understand every word that Klopp says in the team talks. And that's okay, because my teammates will tell me, but I do understand how he wants us to play. He says he's very clear about the style of play, and he only wants simple things. Everybody defends. You enjoy the attack. You have fun when you're trying to score a goal. And that's it. So because Klopp is able to be so clear and really build that confidence, right, helping everybody to perform at their best, Nunez can feel that. He says, yeah, the coach always gives me confidence. So it's okay if I don't understand everything he says, because I get the gist of it and we can work together, right? So what do we know then? What can football teach us about intercultural leadership? Shared goals, being adaptable, having really clear communication. These are all the keys to successful intercultural leadership. And when you can do that well, when you can get lots of different people with lots of different perspectives and talents and backgrounds and bring them all together in a cohesive group with its own group identity, things that can go extremely well for you. So let's turn to the module. Before we do that, I just want to draw your attention to this link down at the bottom of the screen. That is where all the references for the presentation are. I made sure to only use references that were publicly available. So you should be able to read everything that I read to prepare this presentation. Some of that is academic stuff about culture and leadership, and some of it is interesting things about Klopp's management style and just gossip about Liverpool Football Club if you're into that. But so do have a look at the links, those references. I hope will be interesting. But so what are we going to talk about this summer? Well, it's basically going to expand on everything I've just spoken about. So in the first week, we'll talk about the essentials, right? Just the nitty gritty. What is culture and how does it work, right? Like what's actually going on there? We'll talk a bit about bias. Where does it come from? Is it always bad? Can it be useful? And how does that affect organizations? How does bias affect organizations? In the second week, we'll talk about cultures together, right? So we'll talk more about the difference between interculturalism and multiculturalism. We'll kind of have a debate about how helpful these terms are, if they really make a difference. And we'll talk about ethics, how understanding other people's ethical frameworks and ethical ideas might help us understand each other better. So one of the things we'll do in that week is you'll have the chance to tell the class about a philosopher or an ethical model from Turkey, right? So we'll learn more about different kinds of ways of seeing the world in that way. And we'll also talk about how we can communicate effectively. And of course, by the second week, you'll have been in Liverpool for 2 weeks or maybe 5 weeks by that point. No, 2 weeks because it's in June. So you'll have been in Liverpool for a while. So we'll have had a lot of hands-on experience about intercultural communication. And we'll talk about it. We'll talk about what we've seen go well, how we can improve, and we'll use our own experiences to understand the academic literature. And in the third week, then, we'll bring it together and we'll talk about leadership and culture. So we'll think about leadership. If it's really that important, is it maybe a little bit overblown? Maybe, maybe not. We'll talk about it. And we'll talk about leading in multicultural organizations and the challenges and the opportunities that come with that. And we'll also talk about organizational culture, because I think that's really interesting and often overlooked when we think about intercultural leadership, is each organization has its own culture. And sometimes if you've got a huge corporation like Coca-Cola or Nike or, whatever, that has different, headquarters in different countries, how do they maintain a corporate culture and how different is that as you move around? So there's a lot of really fun stuff that we can talk about. And I really, really hope that you join us this summer, because I would love to get to know you better. And that's me done. So I will hand it back over to you now, Ed.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting. I hope you all found it as interesting as I did. And I think that was a particularly good one, because it did sort of condense, a lot of the themes that you would be exploring if you choose this module on the summer school into a very interesting sort of 20 minutes or so. Thank you very much, Lisa. So I've been answering a few questions as we go. These are just, I've stuck a few pictures on the end, really, just to give you an idea of sort of the feel of the summer school, if you like. But there's a few sort of themes of the questions that have come up. Many of them asking sort of what do I need to do to apply, and what does it look like? So I will send more information following this presentation, probably early next week, to everybody who's registered. So you don't have to know everything now or make notes or anything like that. But essentially, as I said at the beginning, the summer school is a 3-week or a 6-week program. It is designed for undergraduate students who are currently studying at any university around the world and think that an experience internationally and think that meeting people from around the world and studying in a different environment would be valuable to their development, to their career, to their professional or personal life. The program itself begins in mid-June. So the course begins on the 13th of June for 3 weeks, or you can choose to join at the beginning of July for 3 weeks to end on the 21st of July. Either way, you will have a range of modules and different areas to explore, and you will have a social program, such as you can see here on one of our trips out to the countryside or the Lake District round, fairly close to Liverpool. So you do really get a mix of the academic and the sort of social and the cultural. And what's really, really nice is that you see this group of people who come from all over the world, never met each other before, and at the end of 3 weeks they're so close, they're so sort of friendly, and that continues beyond. So everyone's still in contact via LinkedIn and Instagram and all of that. So it's a really, really nice community that's building. There was a question which I have answered sort of on the typed ones about what to do to apply. Really, it's an online application. The applications are open now. It's not competitive in the way that some programs are competitive. We want this program to be open to as many people as possible. We want it to be international, and we want it to be available for people. So we don't ask for much in the way of personal statements or anything like that. The idea of it is that we get a diverse group of people with diverse interests and experiences, and that's part of the value. There's more questions about scholarships. It's not great news on scholarships. I'm not going to lie. It's because it's a short course. because it's a program that sort of falls outside of the postgraduate or the undergraduate side of things, there's not much in the way of support for international students wishing to do this. But what I will say is that there are discounts on the fees for early applications, which gives you a full 10% immediately from your off your tuition fee. And the other thing to say is that if you are at, which I assume most of you will be, at a university in Turkey, I or a member of the team would be very, very happy to speak directly to your international office and look at ways in which we can make it more easier to apply, more affordable for you guys, and to sort of to work with the university, because you'll be surprised how sometimes universities can find a bit of support for students aiming to go internationally, and we will do what we can to help with that. So there were some questions more focused on the subjects. Actually, if you don't mind, sorry, Lisa, I was just about to bring you in on a couple, but I've just spotted a couple which I can easily do. Do most students live on campus? For the international summer school, I should have mentioned this, your accommodation is guaranteed on campus. So you'll be living somewhere called Crown Place, which is, I mean, literally 5 minutes from where I'm sitting here. It's 5 minutes from your classes. It's 10-minute walk to the center of town. It's a really, really good position, and that is guaranteed. So you don't have to worry about that when you sort of decide to study. That's all taken care of. And the facilities, labs, libraries, theatres, etc. at the university, I will send a link around that. So the question is, what are the facilities like? You've got 2 huge libraries, which you have full access to. You have got social spaces, computing spaces. You've got gyms with a pool and a climbing wall and squash courts. You have cafes and restaurants on and around campus. Labs wise, I mean, you probably won't be using labs for the summer school, but in terms of wider programs and things, we have we have world leading labs, because we are a Russell Group university, so we're recognized as being at the forefront of research, whether that's in dentistry, medicine, microbiology, whatever it might be. So it's worth having a look at that if you have a particular area of interest. But the teaching facilities are great, and the things that come along with that, the social stuff, are also very, very strong. But I will send some information about that. From which website can we register for scholarship? I will send links out to where you can register. But again, scholarship wise, it's probably something that might be best explored at this end, at your end rather. There's a couple of sort of management focused questions. Can you see those, Lisa, or do you want me to read them out?
Can you read them out, please?
Yeah, if these are your questions and I'm doing a bad job of explaining them, please get into the chat and tell me. And equally, if anybody has questions for Lisa about what you've just seen or about the module more widely, stick them in, please do. So the first one is from an anonymous attendee. If an executive does not have leadership qualifications, what could be done from the teammate's perspective? If an executive does not have leadership qualifications, what could be done from the teammate's perspective?
Yeah. So there's kind of 2 ways to think about that. If you're thinking in terms of like formal qualifications, personally, I don't think that is as important as just practice and learning and being in leadership situations. But if you mean, what do you do if they're not a good leader? I think the most important thing you can do is stop and think about, why aren't they a good leader? What isn't working for you? What behaviors, what attitudes, like what is it that you don't like about it? Partly because then you'll know for yourself, for your own development, leadership development, what kinds of things work well and don't work well. But also it'll help you understand what's important for you in jobs. And sometimes people seem to have like not be great leaders or not understand how to speak to other people. And sometimes it's just a thing about understanding. So we'll talk about in the module, there's this idea of 360-degree leadership or leading up. So we'll definitely talk about it because there are ways if you have a bad boss that sometimes, not always, but sometimes you can kind of nudge them and help them become the kind of leader that you work well with. But that's a great question. Yeah.
Of course, muted. Yeah, the leadership question is really, really interesting. And actually, there is, if you're interested in sort of these issues of intercultural leadership and general management, you will find that on the summer school there's a sort of a cluster of modules that you can explore that are all around sort of leadership and development of those skills and intercultural understanding and that area. So I will make sure we send out a list of the modules, which you can also have a look at if management is your thing. I'm not sure if this is one that we can answer necessarily. How should we transcribe our leadership features to our personal statements? Because I think it's important. I suppose there's a general question there. How do you talk about being a leader? How do you talk about sort of your leadership qualities?
Yeah, I think that's another really good question. And I do want to be clear, like, I think studying leadership is really important. I don't think that just because somebody has a certificate from Harvard Business School that they're automatically a good leader. But talking about it and thinking about it is really important. So when you're thinking about your leadership features, you might want to look up, there's theories about leadership traits and leadership behaviors. So if you're thinking about leadership as a thing that you do rather than a thing that you are, kind of think more broadly about your life. Like, when have you helped people come together towards a goal? Have you maybe been a leader, maybe not in that very top-down, I am in charge kind of way, but have you encouraged people along to act in particular ways, maybe as a student representative on a sports team, even at home, right? Are you a leader in your house helping people accomplish their daily tasks? So I would encourage you to maybe do some research on leadership behaviors and then think very widely about how you exhibit those in your life, because I think that most of us do exhibit leadership behaviors sometimes, and developing your leadership is about picking those points out and bringing them together and talking about them in a particular way, if that's helpful.
Brilliant. Are there any more questions? Because we're getting towards the end of our allocated time, and I haven't answered necessarily everything either typed. There's a few typed questions. Can you acknowledge about costs and fees? Yeah, I've shared a link. I don't know if you've seen it in the questions and answers, but I can stick it in the chat as well. So dates and fees are all on the website. Here we go. And again, there we go. So that's gone into the general chat. The idea is that you decide whether you want to do a full 6-week program or you want to do a 3-week program, and which 3-week program, and you can make that decision according to your summer plans, what you want to be doing, how long you want to be overseas, but also by having a look at the modules which are specific to one of the 3 blocks. So if you're interested more in management, you might choose to do the last 3. If you're interested in, I don't know, sustainability or international relations, you might choose to do the first one. But again, I will send some more information around that, and I've just put the dates and fees into the chat. If there's no more questions, we will say thank you very much to everybody. Genuinely, it's been really nice to see so many interested people. I hope you have found it useful and interesting, and I doubly hope that some of you will decide to either find out a bit more which you can do online, and all of our contact details are on there, or I will be emailing you out in the next few days, and you're very welcome to respond and ask any questions you might have. I'm very easy to find, so you'll be more than welcome to get in touch. And yeah, just a final thank you, massive thank you to Lisa for presenting and sharing this taster of what you can sort of expect on the summer school, and for Zeynep and the team for organizing this session. And thank you all for attending once again.
Yes, thank you very much for the great presentation, Ed and Lisa. It was very informative for the attendees, and you covered all of the questions. Thank you for your answers too. Also, could you please share an email address on the chat box, so if the participants have further questions, they can contact you. In the meantime, I would like to thank the participants in Turkish as well. Katıldığınız için teşekkür ederiz arkadaşlar. Umarım sizin için de faydalı bir webinar olmuştur. University of Liverpool ile ilgili diğer sorularınız için Ed'in birazdan paylaşacağı e-mail adresinden ulaşabilirsiniz. Bir sonraki webinarlarımızda görüşmek üzere. Yes, thank you very much again. It was our pleasure to have you in IEFT Talks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.